I am now going to introduce the lovely Celynn, who I have known now for, I think, probably 3, 4, might even be going on 5 years now. Celynn has worked with me in a number of ways within the Mastermind groups, and every time I hear from Celynn and work with Celynn, I discover something that I didn't know. And I would like to sort of acknowledge Celynn and say thank you, Celynn, for my journey with weight and sleep and nutrition and all the other things that go along with that. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, Celynn is now going to appear. Perfect. And I'm going to do the, that's magic. For some reason, I'm a little bit nervous this morning, Celynn. But anyway, with, as always, a virtual round of applause for Celynn, and away you go.
Thank you. That was a lovely ta-da, jump out the cake almost moment. So delightful to be with everybody today. It seems that Simon woke up after a good night's rest. So let's see how all of us can try and achieve that most of the time, because this is such an important topic. And in fact, when it comes to holistic well-being, it probably is the one thing that if we all got right, most of the time we would feel significantly better physically, emotionally, and mentally. In fact, I was listening to yet another TED Talk on this topic. There's quite a few out there, and by Vicky Colpin from Ashridge Business School. And she claimed that if all of us in the UK slept for 7 to 8 hours every night for a year, we could potentially save the UK economy in excess of £30 billion. So an important topic for sure. And to get us started, I thought I would read the first few lines of one of my favorite poems from David Whyte, an Irish poet, who wrote this poem on the basis of sleep deprivation and extreme fatigue and burnout. It's called Sweet Darkness. There's a clue here into helping us get better night's rest already. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark where the night has eyes for its own. So how true is that when we feel tired, everything that we look at, that we sense, feels tired too? Thank you. Thank you. I don't think the internet got a good night's rest last night, Simon.
No, I don't either.
So the poem reminds us that we need to go into the dark, and that's one of the gems around sleep. And also it acknowledges how when our eyes are tired, the whole of the world and everything around us can seem tired. And I'm sure that you feel the same. When you don't get a good night's rest, and especially if it lingers longer than just a day, you can certainly be impacted. And in fact, we know that sleep affects this 4-pound universe that sits on our shoulders. It affects our ability to problem solve, to concentrate. When we don't have enough sleep, so that means less than about 6 hours a night, we could increase hormones like ghrelin, which make us hungry and crave sugar. We increase cortisol, which increases inflammation. And in terms of mental health and overall well-being, emotional and physical, it's key to get enough rest. So how do we do that? Well, if we think of the seasons, so behind me is an image of autumn. I often use the seasons in my workshop as a way to reflect on a 24-hour period, because sleep is very much about how we live our day. So from the morning to when we actually want to sleep, which for me, sleep is perhaps winter. And when we wake up in the morning, that could be spring, which then leads into summer, which then leads into the end of the day where we wind down before going to bed, and that is autumn. And what I found with a lot of the clients and people that I work with is when we don't create enough of an autumn or a wind down, it's much harder for us to firstly fall asleep, but also then to stay asleep once we are asleep. So we know that we need to oscillate during the day. When we look at high performance and sustaining mental, physical, and emotional well-being, one of the keys is to also understand that not only do we sleep in 90-minute cycles, but we generally work at our best in about 90-minute cycles. And the key to that is, if you're wanting a better night's sleep, I assure you that it starts not only with how you start your day, and we're going to chat about that in a moment, but also about how you give yourself permission to rest during the day. Now, rest doesn't have to mean a 2-hour siesta or a power nap, but it certainly does mean giving yourself permission and the chance to take a minute or two to recover, to rest. And that can be at your laptop. Ideally, it's a good idea to every 90 minutes at least get up and stretch and move, but also just to go inward and to give your mind and your body a time to break and transition into another task. So before we go on, I would like us to do an exercise. What I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to set my timer for a minute. And over the next minute, all I want you to do is count how many breath cycles you take. So a breath cycle is an inhale and an exhale is one breath cycle. So 1, 2. And without changing your breath, count how many breath cycles you take starting now. An inhale and an exhale is one breath cycle. We're about halfway. That's 1 minute. So I'm not sure how many cycles you had, but perhaps if you're comfortable to share the number in the chat, that would be great. And I'm going to share with you, I see 9. I'm just going to wait a few seconds to see what kind of numbers come in. 14, 12, 22, 12, 14, 26, 11, 15. So a wide range, which is what I would have expected. 8. So the guideline, if you want to ensure that you're breathing deeply and consciously, and the benefits to this is when we actively take deeper breaths, we allow the rest and digest part of the nervous system to be triggered, and that helps mitigate and reduce the impact of the stress response, which is often what is responsible for us not being able to get a good night's rest. And what we seem to know is that when you're breathing properly, so deep into your belly and taking a full breath cycle to ensure that you get enough oxygen into your system and tap into that rest and digest nervous system, we should be taking between 6 breath cycles and possibly 10 or 12 in a minute. So some of you are in that range, but some of you are way more. So this is just good information. It's good inquiry. If at this time in the morning, unless you've had maybe a double espresso and that's what's causing you to breathe a lot faster, you could potentially already be in the stress response, and your breath is a good guide to that. So if this is the one thing you take from this chat, I would love you to just be aware of your breath first of all, and then aware of the fact that if you breathe deeper into your belly and slow down your breath and try and bring your breath cycles per minute between 6 and 12, you will have a really good impact on your stress system. And the more you do that in the day, the more likely you are to be able to rest at night, because you'll have less lingering stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol in your body, which is probably part of what's impacting your sleep. So over the next 15 minutes, as I chat, perhaps just sit comfortably or stand, whatever you're choosing to do, and take slightly deeper breaths and see how that helps you feel. So leading into sleep is all about what we do in the day, giving ourselves permissions to rest. And I would recommend that maybe every 90 minutes or even mid-morning and mid-afternoon, you take time to do a mindful minute, switch on your timer, go inward, count your breath cycles, and just become aware of how many breath cycles am I taking? Could I perhaps slow that down? And then getting a good night's rest, making sure that you create that autumn season to give yourself permission and to let your brain realize you're now switching off. Because I know that for many of us on this call, you're likely to be, there's enough work to keep you busy 24 hours a day. So switching off and having a key time, and especially with us working from home, symbolically, and having a ritual or routine where we actually tell ourselves work is done. So if you're having an office or you've got a separate room, to actually leave that, close it up, or if you're perhaps working in your living room, to shut down your laptop, but to do something, ideally not just going for a drink, that helps you transition into the evening and the rest part of your evening. Because all of us, for a couple of hours, at least, once again, 90 minutes, there's that special number, 90-minute cycles for sleep, 90-minute cycles for energy in the day, and at least 90 minutes before you want to put your head on the pillow and sleep, you should not have any external information coming into your space. So ideally, stay off digital devices as much as possible. Put your phones, put your laptops, put your iPads, and even Kindles away, and rather find some kind of activity that you can do that helps your prefrontal cortex, this part of your brain that's continuously engaged and switched on and up, permission to actually stop. So that can be various things. I know for some people, taking a bath is great. I find that in some, I don't really feel like a bath. By the way, there's some research to show, or some evidence, that if you have a warm bath and you add some, I know this was one of the questions, you add a magnesium-based salt, like Epsom salts. Magnesium is a mineral that helps your muscles relax. So taking it as a supplement, 150 milligrams to 300 milligrams before you want to sleep, or using it in your bath. It's also the fact that you're in the bath and relaxing that gives yourself permission to wind down. I tend to make myself a warm tea. For some of us, if you enjoy chamomile, that's pretty good. And then I have books that I read, so actual hardcover books that are not work related. And although I did say we should stay away from our digital devices, the one time I do use my phone in the evening, especially if I've had a very switched on day where I've just been in the stress response. So I've had back-to-back presentations or workshops or done a lot of work, or something is really on my mind, or I might be feeling particularly stressed, is I then use one of the apps on my phone to help meditate or do a mindfulness-based exercise. So Calm is a good resource. I know that many of you must know about Headspace, Insight Timer. There's also lovely hypno meditations. One of the local speakers that I work with, Nikki Owen, has got many free resources on a website called The Breathing Space. And I've used some of her 20-minute or half an hour relaxation hypno meditations that help me to go to sleep. And that's when I do allow myself to use my phone. However, I have switched off notifications on my phone. So I use the do not disturb function and the screen control, where I don't allow any WhatsApps or emails to come onto my phone after a certain time at night. That was one of the best things that I ever did. So that's preparing for us before we go to sleep. What has helped me is during sleep. So once you're in bed, for those of you that are lucky enough to be able to fall asleep quite quickly, that's great. I struggled for quite a while with insomnia when I went through a particular stressful time. And this image of me lying on the shoreline has helped a lot. So the power of visualization, imagination is useful, because when you're thinking of something like I use the shoreline, or when you're thinking of maybe your breath, or maybe you're doing a body scan relaxation where you're lying in bed and you allow your muscles to relax from your head to your toe, you're giving your monkey mind something to do. So some of you may have heard of the term monkey mind or read the book, The Chimp Paradox. And it's certainly when we relax and surrender to rest that our monkey can actually, well, for me, sometimes at 1 or 2 a.m., my monkey can feel like a great big gorilla. And so giving your mind something to do will help you not to worry and think about other things. For some people, writing down what's on your mind before you go to bed or when you wake up in the morning is useful. Please notice what I said there. I didn't say put it into your phone, because as much as possible, you want to not switch on digital devices. Not only are you then opening yourself to the light, which we know could reduce the melatonin that's produced by the pineal gland in your brain that helps you feel drowsy and get a good night's sleep, but you're also then associating yourself with a device that puts you into work mode. And you may also then see some WhatsApps or messages or be tempted to go and check email, and then that can take you down a really bad cascade. So giving your mind something to do helps the monkey mind not get pulled away into those thoughts. Journaling is a powerful thing. So actually having a notebook and a pen and paper where you write it down, it helps tell the brain you won't forget about these things, and you're accepting and acknowledging that they're there, but you're also choosing to put them away. So the visualization that I still use, that I've used for a long time, is that when I go to bed, I used to get quite anxious about not falling asleep. And then I would check the time because I know that I like to have 7.5 hours. And the more I knew what time it was, the more anxious I got. So another thing, do not have the time visible in your bedroom, ideally. Certainly try not to look at your phone, even if you can't fall asleep. And then use a visualization that may help you. I know that the UK military have one where they shared on radio about a year ago, was where you imagine yourself hanging in a hammock or on a canoe or some kind of boat on a gentle river. So you imagine yourself being cocooned and floating. I tried that. It didn't work so well for me. What worked for me was, right, I'm in bed, I'm horizontal, I'm resting, which is what sleep is about. It's about giving us permission to rest. So whether I fall asleep or not, I'm still here resting. And the ocean may come and carry me out to sleep. So for me, the ocean is some symbolic of deep rest, but it may not. And even if it doesn't, I'm still resting on the ocean, able to hear the sound of the gentle waves, and I'm resting in a beautiful environment. So that's a powerful visualization that I use. I also do it when I wake up at night. So some of you have asked the question, what happens when we wake up at night and can't get back to sleep? I would definitely first check, if we were having a private conversation, I'd ask you, have you got a dark bedroom? So have you canceled out as much light as possible? That's quite important, especially leading into sleep, which I'm finding quite challenging at the moment with the sun setting so late in summer. I find that my brain isn't really registering that I'm going to sleep. So what I've started to do is I draw my blackout curtains if I do want to get a good night's rest. And I allow myself to almost feel like it's darker inside than it might be outside. You can also purchase glasses that you can wear that have a kind of red tinge as opposed to blue, which helps to tell the brain to produce some melatonin, and that you can now get into sleep mode. The temperature of your room is important. Also quite difficult at the moment because it's quite warm, but having a warmer blanket, but cooling down the air as much as possible. So definitely leaving a window open if you can. If you're sensitive to sound, like I am, getting the best quality earplugs can help. I use the silicone ones that don't create an ache in my ear canal, but can mold, a bit like the swimmers sometimes use. Some people also say that it helps to sleep with an eye mask. And then, of course, feel good in bed. So get the best quality linen, wear the kind of clothing that you actually like against your skin. Some people say that using lavender as an essential oil, so some drops on your pillow, can also help. For me, it's the ritual, the fact that you actually put the drops there, or that you make the chamomile tea. For me, it's not always the mechanism that's important. It's the permission that we give ourselves to rest. There are also some very good yoga postures that you could do for 2 or maybe 5 minutes on your bedroom floor, or even on your bed before resting. If you're interested in those, you can always contact me and I can point you in the right direction to find them. Those of you that maybe do yoga, the one that is the most popular is the Savasana, the posture that all yoga uses right at the end, where you lie and give yourself permission to almost sink into the ground. And the key, though, around sleeping is not just what we do beforehand and what we do during sleep, but it's also how we start our day. So this is a great book. There's many books out there, but I particularly like Positive Sleep by Giles, because he speaks about the importance of bookending your day. So when we start our day in the morning, we're still in a bit of that dream space. And it's important not to just jump up, pick up our phones, engage with notifications, answer emails, because you put yourself into the stress response really quickly. So if you can slowly think of spring in the morning, so work up to summer, then during your day, think of, could I do a mindful minute and become aware of my breath and reduce the impact of the stress response? That's why we're doing that during the day. then could I give myself 90 minutes to 2 hours before I want to sleep to actually wind down? And then if I happen to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I can't get back to sleep, you will not be able to practice then something that you haven't practiced. It's a bit like a professional athlete. They will train for weeks and months and years before they do the most important event. So we are training during the day to be able to do the big event, which is the sleep at night. And if you really wake up at night and you struggle to get back to sleep, a lot of sleep experts, including Giles, recommend that you get out of bed, go sit in another room, read a book, maybe do a mindfulness exercise, do a body scan, and then go back to bed. I, however, find that hasn't worked for me. So this is what's so marvelous about ourselves. We're all unique. And I think if we keep an attitude of curiosity and lightness, even though I know how difficult it can be, I've struggled with sleep for most of my life. So I know it can be very anxiety provoking. However, when I decided to relax, to use the imagery of I am horizontal and giving myself permission to rest, I found that it was easier to have more nights rest than not. And then before I wrap up, I'd like to mention the topic of dreams and sleep, because that's come up. One of the questions was, why are my dreams so different at the moment? I'm quite interested in Jungian philosophy and coaching. And Carl Jung was a psychoanalyst who spoke a lot about how dreams are the language of the subconscious and how we can actually use dreams to not just process things, but also to get some insights into what our subconscious mind is thinking and feeling. And what I did for quite a while was I kept a dream journal. So in the morning, when I woke up, I wouldn't always remember my dreams, but I would allow myself to linger for 10 or 15 minutes in that space, purposefully saying, I want to remember, I want to remember. And for the first few days or weeks, it wasn't that easy. But now, almost within a minute, my dreams start to come back. Because most of us are dreaming. We just don't all give ourselves permission to remember them. And then I would write down some feelings, sensations, some images. And it can be a really exciting tool or technique when you notice patterns. Now, I'm not a dream expert, but I can definitely recommend that if you'd like to keep track of your dreams, and if you feel that you want to discuss them, to find somebody. There are many therapists and coaches and psychologists that use dreams as a way to help you analyze what's going on in your life. And you know that expression of don't make a decision before you sleep on it? I highly recommend, if something's really stressing you, is that you give yourself permission to rest and allow your subconscious to help you to potentially find a solution. So we're at the end of the presentation. We're going to go into questions soon. But for the next minute, what I invite you to do is to take a moment to rest wherever you may be, to maybe stop looking at me so that you don't have this external stimulus coming into your space. Soften your gaze, perhaps even close your eyes. And based on what I've spoken about and shared, what is one thing that you're going to commit to trying today to help you rest more or get a better night's rest and sleep? One thing, because we have so much on our plate. And if you want to set yourself up for success, ideally, you want to just think of one thing. Is it going to be the way you wake up in the morning, how you approach your day and rest, being conscious of your breath, how you transition into autumn, how you set up your bedroom around temperature, the different senses of what you can smell, taste, feel? Is there a routine that you could do every day? As if you were a child, putting a child to bed, we know that we have routines that help them to know that it's bedtime. And then if you're waking up at night, could you perhaps journal, use meditation or body scan, or different types of visualization to help? And if you're happy to share, I'd love to share in the chat, what is the one thing that you're going to take and try and put into practice to ensure that you feel more rested, less stressed, and actually approach sleep with a sense of more lightfulness and curiosity. I'm curious to see that. And thank you. I'm going to look at the comments. And Simon, I believe we do have more questions, and maybe even more have come in.
Yeah, we've got lots of things. Just whilst people put stuff into the chat box and put any questions in, I just want to go over 3 things, Celynn, just to give people an opportunity to write them down if they didn't get a chance first time round. The name of the person that you shared with regards to the dream book, what was that gentleman's name again?
Giles Watkins, Positive Sleep.
Brilliant, thank you.
And he just wrote an article that was published this morning on the link between sleep and COVID, which was super interesting. And I shared the link with you earlier. I'm happy to share it again.
Excellent. So if I share that in the chat box, that's that gentleman there. So if I do that and do that, then everybody's got access to that. You comment. What was the name of the lady who did the breathing space? The website.
Nikki Owen.
Nikki Owen.
She's a wonderful, wonderful lady, and her hypno meditations and breathing techniques are possibly the best that I've experienced.
Excellent, thank you. And then you mentioned taking magnesium before bed. I know you said how many grams, but it went that quick that I didn't get an opportunity to write that down.
Between 150 and 300.
So between 150 and 300 grams. And then the next question I ask stupid questions, I know, but when do I take it? Do I take it as I hit the pillow, or do I take it?
Well, no, at least an hour before, because it has time to digest and be absorbed.
Brilliant. So between 150 and 300 grams of magnesium about an hour before it comes through. So just to give you an idea for everybody that's watching, we've got earplugs, or get some earplugs. We've got take 1 minute's deep breathing rest every 90 minutes. Different wake up routine, and not pick up my phone up as soon as I wake up. Mobile phones off. Establish a better bedtime routine, take time to breathe during the day, and that's one that resonated with me as well. Swimming, and then a question from Edmund and the other one. So the first one, what time is it best to go to bed, Celynn?
Well, I know there was one question about, are the hours before midnight better for us?
Yeah. So
apparently, yes. So I've read, from Ariana Huffington to Dr. Narina Ramaklan to Matthew Walker, they all seem to be consistent and say yes. So maybe somewhere between 10 and 11 p.m., knowing that most of us will wake up 7 to 8 hours later. The key is how rested you feel when you wake up, and if you're potentially able to wake up before an alarm. So for some of us, 7 hours will be enough. Some of us I've noticed that I need 9 hours at the moment. And I think that's because I'm quite stressed because of everything that's going on. And I tend to withdraw when I feel stressed. So the key is, though, to wake up feeling rested.
Excellent. Thank you. And Bob's just shared, plan today for tomorrow to say the rain and play the rain falling sound. Yeah, that's another one that resonates with me as well. Michaela's asked, what happens if you don't dream? Sometimes you feel like you wake up 10 minutes after you've shut your eyes and there's a big blank in between, but you feel just as tired.
So what I'd recommend in your case, perhaps, is consider using a Fitbit or some kind of device that measures sleep. There's so many of them, and you may be surprised that you actually are getting deep rest. But the point for me is that you're waking up not feeling rested. So what I would do is ask you questions around, are you drinking caffeine after midday? Are you drinking any alcohol? Because even 1 unit of alcohol, which is a small glass of wine, can negatively impact your sleep. And are you doing some kind of mindfulness based or meditation in the day to help you relax? Because obviously, often when we're very stressed, we definitely can't sleep. And then just wanting to switch off after being switched on is very difficult for the body. You're welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to have a chat with you personally and see if I can help.
Excellent. And the 1 glass of alcohol, I know, because I've heard you talk about this before. Lots of people say, well, I go to sleep as soon as I've had a drink, or a drink puts me to sleep. Am I right in saying that that's not the same kind of sleep?
Exactly, yeah. So alcohol can make you drowsy, so you can feel like you want to just nod off and sleep. But maybe 2 hours later, after the alcohol dehydrogenase, the enzyme in your liver has done its work, you can then almost like, I know that I sometimes wake up with a jolt if I have too much to drink. And then like 2 or 3 hours later, and then I struggle to get back to sleep. So exactly, it prevents you from dropping into that deep delta theta brainwave activity where we do dream and we file memories and the brain cleanses itself out using the lymphatic system and all the miracle, wonderful stuff that takes place in deep sleep.
Excellent. And I know another one that you shared with me right at the beginning around carbohydrate and sugar,
Yeah.
and how I used to wake up in the middle of the night, and as soon as you said it's because you've got a sugar crash or you're craving sugar or whatever, I don't know what the technical language is, Celynn, but as soon as I became conscious of that and cut the carbohydrate and cut the sugar before going to bed, I know that helped me get through. And I know that's a bigger subject than what we've got time to go into today.
Yeah.
But perhaps you could just share something around that as to what that.
Yeah, sure, Simon. The magic keys there is that you're balancing your blood glucose levels, your blood sugar. Because by not having carbohydrate, you're probably eating some protein and vegetables, which are slow releasing. So they stabilize the blood sugar, which could help you get a better night's rest. Because when your blood sugar goes up or plummets, you can trigger a sense of anxiety. And I know that my heart rate increases if I have some sugar or something fast releasing late at night, which then when you're trying to fall asleep and have a low, slow heart rate, it's not going to help.
Excellent, thank you. Sagar, you got your hand up at the moment. If you've got a question, you pop that in the chat box for me or in the Q&A box, that'd be great. Oh, it's just disappeared. Brilliant. Going over to the questions. What do you do after trying everything and you still can't get to sleep? I think you answered that during the course of the presentation, but just repeat that, because I think that's a good one for people to hear again.
Very good one. I'd like to challenge what everything is. Is it everything? Because most of us think about sleep and we only think of the evening. We forget about how we start our mornings, how we manage our stress and breathe during the day, what we're eating and drinking, like caffeine potentially. And if you don't have enough, even on a nutrient level, if you don't get enough magnesium, for instance, you might struggle to sleep. So I would want to be sure that your everything is my everything.
Excellent. So, and from my perspective, there was a huge amount of tips in there of things that we could do on the way through. So I've got a funny feeling I'm going to have to watch the video again and make notes as we go through in order to catch all those action points, and then that counts as everything.
And I'd like to I noticed a lovely comment from Wendy around doing yoga nidra to help you switch off and doing all those things. That's really, really good. And definitely stop the notifications. We have to control the devices because at the moment they're controlling us because of the way that we're so connected.
So Wendy's just said about stopping caffeine after 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
I know you said caffeine after 2 o'clock. After 12 o'clock.
After midday. I'll tell you why. Because for most of us, the half-life of caffeine is about 6 hours. That means that caffeine can last for 6 hours in your system. So if you have a cup of coffee at midday, at 6 p.m., you've still got half the caffeine of that coffee in your system. So by midnight, you've still got a quarter. So this is slightly dependent on our genetics. Like I know through genetic testing that I'm a slow caffeine metabolizer and alcohol metabolizer. So I get impacted stronger than perhaps somebody who metabolizes coffee fast. But keep that in mind that if you're struggling to sleep, maybe you should have your last coffee, certainly if it's caffeinated coffee, earlier than 4 p.m.
Okay. And one of the questions, and I can't quite say it on there, but I know they have a cup of tea. Oh, here it is. What time of day should I stop my caffeine intake to help me sleep better? Which you've just answered. But does a 4 p.m. cup of tea make an impact?
If it's regular builder's tea, generally 2 cups of tea would give the same kind of caffeine as 1 cup of coffee. So it depends how sensitive you are. You know what I would do is for 1 week, don't have it or have a different type of caffeine-free tea at that time and see if it makes a difference. I wouldn't say deprive yourself of something that you really enjoy if it's not really going to help. So experiment and try it out for a week.
And see how it works. Brilliant. Question from Gordon. How can I stop my wife snoring?
How can you stop your wife snoring? It depends why she's snoring. I mean, has she got sleep apnea, which is quite common? Apparently 50% of snorers are not breathing enough. So then there's a different route. It could be pillows. And here, that's a whole different. In fact, Giles speaks about snoring in his book and shares different techniques and things that you can try. There's some sleep experts that actually say that we should be sleeping potentially in separate beds and rooms if it's really that bad. But yeah, that's definitely not a practical solution.
No, and another question was, why do I snore, and how can I stop myself from snoring? So, are there any sort of practical tips, allowing your back, hang from the ceiling, anything like that?
The more you practice breathing, and there's a particular breath called nostril breathing, alternate nostril breathing. If you type in Google alternate nostril breathing, you'll find it, where you block one nostril and breathe in and out and then do the other. That could help because it helps your nasal passages, which is where we often get the relaxation in the nasal passages in the throat that then make us snore. But basics are, what is your head position? So can you look at getting a special pillow to help reduce snoring? Alcohol tends to relax the muscles around the throat, so that's why we snore. And it's quite a personal thing, though. Once again, I'd welcome you to contact me or take a look at Giles's book to perhaps try out different approaches and then see what works for you.
Excellent. Thank you. I know you touched on this, but it'd be handy just to repeat it. Do relaxation audios help? I use Brain FM, but can't stop my mind wandering. So if we listen to Calm or Headspace or Brain FM, are there any tips to? I know it's just you listen to it, and then after 5 minutes, you think, oh, I've not heard anything of that because I've gone off and drifted onto another subject, often work. But are there any tips to stop the mind wandering, Celynn?
Practice. Mindfulness is it takes a long time. So be kind, be compassionate. And I applaud and celebrate you for even giving it a try. And know that the more you do it, I've been doing mindfulness for about 5 years. And it was only after 3 years, I'd say, that I was able to feel like I was controlling the monkey mind. So try not to get upset with yourself when you notice that your thoughts have wandered. So don't be critical or judgmental, because that will make it worse. Be like, oh, there I go again. Oh, come back. Because every time you do that, you're like, that's where the training comes. So be kind and compassionate to yourself. Keep a sense of humor and just keep practicing.
Excellent. Thank you. So I've coming to the end of the questions now. I've got one more question around a wider subject to ask. So if anybody else has got any more questions that they want to ask before we disappear, then if you pop them in the chat box or pop them in the Q&A, I will also just pop Celynn's LinkedIn profile in the chat box again, because it's on my screen anyway. It's scrolled off the top. I know that your screen doesn't necessarily look like mine does, because I get all of the comps communications, whereas you only get some of them. But anyway, that LinkedIn is in there. Feel free, please, obviously, to connect with Celynn. And if you want to say some nice words of recommendation and things like that, then Celynn, that would be gratefully received, no doubt.
Oh, thank you, Simon. I would be very grateful for that. Thank you.
Definitely. I think you did a sterling job and contributed to the community massively. So any other questions, please pop them in the Q&A, pop them in the chat box, and I'll finish off, unless there's any other questions, with a question around children. So there was 2 questions that came up. Do you have any advice on getting an 8-year-old to sleep? And then how long should a 5-year-old be sleeping for? And I would say as long as possible in my experience, but that's probably not the technical answer.
Well, Simon, you have more experience in this than I do. And absolutely, we tend to need less sleep the older we get. So the younger a child, I mean, you get some infants that can sleep for 19 or 20 hours a day. So 5-year-old, I mean, it's still quite dependent, but I mean, at least 12 hours or so. I'm not an expert and I don't want to give it a particular number, but as much as possible. And then for the 8-year-old, to get them to sleep, my question is, are you creating that autumn? So are you stopping screen time, and have you got a set routine that you do over and over every day that tells them that they're now going to go to rest and sleep? I think it depends on why. Is it them struggling to fall asleep, or are they kicking and resisting against it? I think it depends on the actual circumstance, but the routine is key.
The routine is key, yeah.
And the same thing, the environment, a dark room, minimize noise. I mean, not always easy, I know, to get all these things right.
Yeah, I'm a stickler for routine when I'm putting Ben and Amy to bed. Sally less so, but my 5-year-old will get to sleep at 7 o'clock, 7:30, and well, she didn't wake up before I came over here this morning, so that was 9 o'clock. So everybody, that's that 14 hours.
That's great.
But anyway, brilliant. Right, so if anybody's got any questions for Celynn, or you go away this morning and think, oh, I wish I'd asked that, please feel free to connect with Celynn via LinkedIn and ask the questions. And as I say, give a recommendation. That would be
Yeah,
gratefully.
in fact, Simon, if this topic is really important, I'm happy to do some videos and put content up on LinkedIn. So please feel free to reach out to me and say what you'd like. Like, I'm quite surprised by the questions around sleep, and I've done a lot of research and personal experience in that. So I might do a short video just on dreams and how we can use them to help. So that's very useful if you let me know what you want to hear more about.
Brilliant. That would be brilliant. And as I say, the reason why I think these sessions work really well is because of the questions that people ask before and during. I think it's a fantastic. So we've got lots of thank yous. Gordon, thank you.
I can see.
Jonathan,
My pleasure.
thank you.
Michaela, thank you.
Michaela, thank you. Tony, thank you. I love the thank yous, but as I always say, the action that people take is far more important to me than the gratitude. So all of those different people that put the different things in and said they was going to do stuff, then please let me know, and I will pass those on to Celynn, or let Celynn know through LinkedIn how you've done that. You're welcome, Vanessa. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much to everybody for coming along and for contributing massively, and of course to say a huge thank you to Celynn for giving up her time this morning to help us have a great night's sleep tonight. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Celynn, before we disappear? I feel like I want to go and practice going to sleep for some reason.
The one thing I want to say is don't underestimate how what you do in the day will help you get a better night's rest at night. My key and in my experience, it starts with what you do during the day, not what happens once you're in bed.
Excellent. So what I can take away then is actually starting to go to sleep now, even though I'm not going to sleep until later.
Well, Sandy's going back to bed. I'm with Sandy. I think that sounds like we can have a duvet day.
Yeah, Sandy's in the States, so it's very early for Sandy over. He's either side of the water, so it's probably 3 o'clock in the morning for Sandy, so I don't blame him neither. But anyway, welcome, Sandy, and thank you for coming along, and thank you again, Celynn. That's all for now, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.